Learning about American history is over as far as we used to know it. And I and we have to talk about this, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to fight this every chance that we get. There has been no statement ever issued by a White House that has had a greater impact on public history and on those who we support in terms of history educators than the executive orders that came out yesterday. Now they're going to come for those of us at universities soon enough, but this is actually more important about what's going on with K through 12 schools. The dumpster fire of an executive order that is the in ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling executive order is creating something that has never been seen before in the history of the United States, which is turning education, history education, into an ideological directive. That's not education. That's indoctrination through propaganda in the broadest way possible. Now, there are important elements of that executive order that are all attacks on our children and on us. The fact that it is described as anti-American, subversive, harmful, and false ideologies that are being imprinted on our nation's children. And keep in mind that in all of these executive orders, nation is now capitalized. It's now capitalized. It's now a proper noun, nation. In any case, this kind of attack is unprecedented in the history of the United States. And it is absolutely the tool that is used by fascists around the world. And that is the lesson of history. But what we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about a lot today, we're going to keep talking about this, is we're going to talk about what they mean by patriotic education and who's going to follow that, right? A presentation of the history of America grounded in an accurate, honest, unifying, right? These things are not all consistent with one another. Accurate, honest, unifying, inspiring, and ennobling characterization of America's founding and foundational principles. You can't be accurate and honest and inspiring and ennobling at the same time when we're talking about American history. A clear examination of how the United States has admirably, think about these value statements, right? Admirably grown closer to its noble principles throughout its history. And the concept that commitment to America's aspirations is beneficial and justified, and that celebration of America's greatness in history is proper. This isn't education. This is not honest. This is not accurate. And this is certainly not unifying. And then, of course, there is what they have to say about transition, about gender identity and gender markers. And about all of this being a part of indoctrination. This is ending indoctrination. And then the reestablishment, this is why it's a dumpster fire, it just includes all kinds of things on there, is about reestablishing the 1776 Commission and promoting patriotic education. This is a heck of a thing. And so we're going to be talking a lot about this. There's the Celebrating America's 250th Birthday Executive Order, which is it's an empty vessel compared to what's going on elsewhere. The fact that Task Force 250 is being housed in the Department of Defense. But we are going to unpack the ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling today. There are a lot of people who are focusing on the gender identification aspect of that. That's not my lane. I'm going to let them do that and boost those voices. But we're going to talk about the end of teaching American history as we know it, and what it means for public historians, whether you have letters after your last name or not, whether you consider yourself an amateur or a pro. We're going to be talking about it. And we're going to be talking about it in depth and talking about what we can do to support those people who want to make sure, those educators, those compatriots who absolutely positively are on the right side of this and want to make, and those students who want to make sure they're continuing to get honest history. We are going to continue to provide honest history. We're going to continue to provide support for honest history, for honest, accurate, inclusive, intersectional, authentic representations of that history, and hold accountable those institutions and individuals that are going to go along with this patriot education, with this patriotic education. And who these institutions that will go along with the idea that anything that departs from that is a part of this ridiculous notion that this is somehow indoctrination strategy. Because the other term that we have to now be very clear about is discriminatory equity ideology. Means an ideology that treats individuals as members of preferred or disfavored groups rather than as individuals, and minimizes agency, merit, and capability in favor of immoral generalizations. This is the nationalization of things like Florida has done and will do about teaching how slavery was okay. Slavery is actually beneficial to enslaved people. This is the only way to kind of get through this. Is that it gets through, well, they were men of their time. When we're talking about the Patriots and the founders, which is what this is mostly about. It's mostly about what we talk about. They were men of their time. It was complicated. They weren't perfect. But in the end, slavery wasn't that bad. This is a kind of historical revision that has been mostly applied to the Holocaust. But we are now seeing the federal government inserting that kind of revision. Not so bad. And by the way, the Patriots were the first abolitionists. They were the authors of the eventual end of slavery, and therefore they should be celebrated as such. We have to talk about all that, and we have to talk about what we're going to do about it. What we are doing about it. Not just talking about the issue, but talk about, in fact, the fact that we're going to continue to call this out, and we're going to call this out more and more, especially in calling out the collaborators with this. Because you have to know who you can't trust. You have to know who the good guys and bad guys are in this. Because our students and our teachers need our support as public historians. That's what we do. If we're not here for this in this moment, then hang it up. Hang it up. But we're going to be talking about a lot more of this, and if you thought that we were strident and blunt and forthright before, you ain't seen nothing yet.